Okay, well, my name is Javier Munoz. I was born and raised in Miami-Dade County, and I'm a homegrown product of Miami-Dade Public Schools. I went to school in the county, in the district rather, and I also did my secondary and post-secondary education at Florida International University. And basically what I want to do is bring transparency to the local economy. I know that we're having a lot of issues when it comes to the debt, and I want to make sure that we restructure that debt in a common sense way, and that we pick projects that make financial sense moving forward. We've had a number of issues with the stadium, for example, and the large bond acquisition that we've had over the last 5 years or so. And within the next 6 years, we're going to be paying about $855 million in debt. And that represents about 40% of the total revenue in taxes collected. And as Commissioner, I want to make sure that we help one of the backbones of the Miami-Dade economy, and that's the local business. Right now, we give less than 3% to the local business, and we really have to support them and make sure that we cut the red tape and eliminate a lot of the problems that they're having when it comes to getting licenses and permits, and really foster a culture of innovation and make sure that we can go full circle. And
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Juan Zapata. I've been in this community for 35 years. I'm an immigrant originally from Colombia. I have held numerous different public service positions, appointed and elected. Most recently, I was in the legislature 8 years. I chaired the delegation for 3 years. I chaired the Jackson Governance Task Force. You know, I enjoy public service. I enjoy the ability to help people. I'm very grateful to this community, and felt that I have a great deal of experience, and wanted to offer it at the county commission level in order to make sure that the county reflects the potential of this community. And I think we've all seen Miami-Dade County grow up, become a world-class city, and I think for us to continue growing and taking advantage of the many opportunities we have, we really must do a much better job from a government perspective of creating trust, of being able to be a place that's business friendly, and take advantage of the opportunities that we have, and at the same time not shy away from the challenges that we're facing as we move forward. So I'm glad to be here, and look forward to your tough questions.
No, we're easy. So we start out with the mayor's budget because that's really, right now that's what the commission is looking through. Do you agree with what you've seen of the budget as far as the news reports? And I'm sure neither one of you is on the commission, so this would be the seat for Mr. Martinez, correct, who's running for mayor. So do you agree with how the mayor is proposing this budget? And whether you agree or not, do you see ways that you could help balance the tension that's between the voters who do not want higher property rates, but at the same time services that they're demanding that sometimes aren't covered? So we'll take turns.
Sure. The budget, obviously, this budget was a two-step process. I think the tough decisions were made last year on the budget, and the pain was implemented last year, so that this year there wouldn't be a lot of pain. Obviously, I think the way the county handles the budget process, at least from the commission perspective, it's flawed. The commission should have its own budget staffing. I think the budget should be presented sooner. I think the process that is taken now doesn't really give the commission an adequate ability to propose a budget. It should be the legislative body who puts together the budget, as opposed to kind of the mayor putting forth a budget and the commission tweaking that budget. With that said, I think things have been done well.
Can't get that Tallahassee mindset out of you.
Well, no. Look, when you look at what's happened in the past with regards to the executive and the legislative, we now have an executive in the county commission. The commission really needs to get comfortable with a legislative role. And you do the way you implement legislative policy, really a great deal is through your budget. So by looking at that budget and analyzing where is it that we're not providing enough services and trying to squeeze out efficiencies, I don't think that's enough. Enough of that doesn't get discussed because of the process that's in place. So you really need to talk about, is there enough money in the budget? I would say absolutely, to provide, all the needs that this community has. Now you need to focus on how do you create efficiencies and how do you move that forward. But that being said, I think the mayor's done a good job. I think, he's been fair. He's provided some relief to the workforce. At the end of the day, you need to take care of the people who take care of those you serve. So morale is incredibly important in the county, and it's very low right now. So you need to, improve morale. You need to be fair to them, but you also need to be fair to the taxpayers.
Thank you.
Well, I think the mayor has done a good job so far in trying to really, as Mr. Zapata said, sort of restructure the county to given the current budgetary constraints. But again, I think there's a lot more that still can be done. And I think since we do have the strong mayor system, at the end of the day, the buck does stop there. So I think the mayor does need to present the budget a little bit sooner and involve the commissioners a little bit more when it comes to budgetary decisions. Now, what the mayor really needs to focus on is continuing to streamline, create new, analyze all the processes that go in through each of these departments. A lot of them are understaffed, and then other departments are overstaffed. So I would highly recommend that they look at it on a case-by-case basis and make sure that we completely overhaul these departments and make sure that through process management, everything gets taken care of.
Do you have an example of what would be overstaffed or understaffed in the county right now?
Well, not a specific example, but for example, the transportation authority. Right now, there are some issues with the airport going over budget on the expansion and the fact that it always seems to go past its date, its project completion date. So I would make sure that we select vendors that stay within the budget and make sure that they accomplish their projects on time.
Okay.
The county's sewer system is dangerously fragile. Given the mood of the county, the mood of this commission in terms of not wanting to raise taxes, to raise revenue, to take care of this, what should the county be doing about its failing sewer system? How is it going to get it fixed?
Well, I think that even though that there is this sentiment that we cannot raise any sort of taxes at all, I think one of the areas that we might look at, just to not eliminate, we're not going to raise taxes at all, it would be the when it comes to the county sewer system, especially since how fragile it is and the amount of wastewater that has been found that's been dumped into, eco-sensitive areas. So Miami-Dade traditionally has one of the lowest water tax rates in the country. So I would say that would be an area where we can look at either maintaining levels and streamlining processes, or looking at a bond implementation to really fix to raise the money in order to fix the sewer system.
Would you raise the tax? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Would you raise? I'm not sure what you're saying.
Okay.
You would raise the tax rates, or?
Well, I would take.
bonds?
I would look at both situations, and whatever is more economically feasible would probably be a combination of both.
It's water and sewer fees, right?
Right.
Correct.
So it would be rates and maybe taxes?
Yeah,
or
maybe some
something.
sort of.
Okay.
I would tell you for years the county, the commission and the county has been siphoning money away from water and sewer in order to, fill in some other gaps and some other needs. That obviously needs to stop, and I think that would start to generate some money in order to invest in infrastructure. When you talk about infrastructure, you're talking about what's above ground and underground, and obviously our water and sewer system is important. I think this morning we had a water main break. I remember hearing something about that in the news. That sends a terrible message to business. I mean, who wants to come to a community visit or invest if you have sewage running through the street? So, that needs to be a priority. Now, how do you do that? I think there's a lot of private businesses who would be wanting and willing to make investments in that infrastructure if we created some sort of incentives and credits for them. I think that's one way we can do it without having to raise rates. The other one is eliminating, again, that shift, that drain of money from the system, and then looking at water and sewer. Water and sewer could be a lot more efficient department, and I think there you can start to generate some savings. But I think all options need to be on the table. Obviously, that's critical. It's important. It's the way we've used water, our water supply, the reuse system that we have in this county is deficient in all aspects. It's been we've kicked that down to we've kicked that can down the road. It needs to stop, and we really need to get serious about improving our infrastructure, and obviously that being one of the critical ones.
Can you talk a little bit more, a minute, about when you talk about private investment? What do you mean?
So a lot of folks. I'll give you an example. For example, in Opelika, there's a big redevelopment going on in Opelika Airport. And it's happening also in Miami Airport and other places. These folks, as they're sitting there carving up the ground and building infrastructure, they could be addressing some of these needs. We can get, as big developers come in here and talking about commercial projects and whatnot, they're already tearing up the ground. We can kind of give them an incentive, say, listen, why don't you put up the money to improve our system? So we can have a plan where we can get them to start to, subsidize to a certain degree, but also they can do it on a much more cost-efficient basis because they've already torn up the ground in many instances. So I've talked to several business owners who have said, we've approached the county about investing in this infrastructure, but the county has always given us all kinds of obstacles on why we can't do it or shouldn't do it. Or they say, well, you can't do a piece, you got to do everything. Well, that doesn't make sense either. So we've got to figure out a way where we can maybe get private industry that's already doing some development work on the site and how we can get them to be part of the solution.
So it'd be sort of an impact, instead of a fee toward the water and
Correct.
sewer, it'd be them putting in the lines.
Fees. You can
which
put in the
they
line, say,
put
listen,
in.
you know what, we can give you some sort of, let's look at some property tax abatement. You're creating some additional taxable value. We'll abate some of that if you, instead of just building, let's say, half a mile, you go out and you build 1.5 miles. Those kinds of things, I think we could be creative in bringing in the private industry, where the private industry, who would want to build something on top of, defective sewage lines?
How would that prevent it being a very patchwork?
Well, you have a plan. You have a
system.
plan. You have a plan, and you start to address where the critical needs are, and you see where there's existing development, and you start to address it. Listen, there will be a plan, and the main focus should be on the main infrastructure assets. That's going to be a county responsibility. The main, water treatment facilities, the reuse plants, some main arteries, those are going to be county responsibilities, and you can start looking at that. But also at the same time, there within the entire grid, whether it's new development, existing redevelopment, I think there's opportunities there that haven't been explored. And I think by creating a much more business-friendly process, you can get them to probably get more engaged. Because again, who would want to build a massive development, when their pipes will be fine up to a certain point, but right down the street, the potential for a break is there. The other thing is, look, we need to look at technology. Water metering, a lot of things that we can do to become a lot more sustainable, a lot more water efficient in our community, I think needs to be something we need to start talking about, sustainability moving forward. When you deal with utilities, power, water, all kinds of utilities, you need to talk about sustainability. So let's start building that into a system as we move forward, because I think conserving water is just as important as figuring out ways to how we address our wastewater and making sure we have an adequate water supply.
Thank you.
Let me change the subject to Jackson, and I'll start with you, Mr. Zapata, since you're on the governance oversight
Yes.
board. Do you think that maybe Jackson should be turned into some sort of nonprofit with an independent board, like they do in Tampa or Broward?
Tampa's an excellent model. The difference between Tampa and what we would do here is obviously the taxing funding model is somewhat different, and that would require a legislative fix. I think when the task force looked at Jackson, we looked around the country, what are the best models? The best models are, allow for a public hospital, a safety net hospital, that's governed by an independent body, independent of political interference, or the potential of political interference. Sometimes it's not the actual interference, it's the potential of it that sometimes creates poor decisions. You can't run a healthcare hospital, a public hospital, in today's realities of the healthcare marketplace, taking into account political considerations. And I think that's something that's put Jackson at a disadvantage. If you look at healthcare outpatient, inpatient, Jackson has a very deficient outpatient-inpatient ratio. You look at every successful hospital system, they have a very good ratio where you have more outpatient, where you actually have less inpatient days, more outpatient days, and that's what you need to look at. Whether or not we need to end up with a completely different independent governing body, I would probably tell you that would guarantee us the best results. That's not the only path. There are other paths. But at the end of the day, there has to be a much more overall comprehensive healthcare delivery system here in Miami-Dade County, as other communities have done, where everybody in this community just dumps on Jackson, and the way it's set up, the way it's handled, Jackson cannot carry that burden. That burden we need to do a much better job of spreading that burden, and not so much the burden, but actually become better at delivering health care. We don't deliver health care. We're delivering health services. We're not delivering health care in the sense of providing better outcomes for people and keeping people healthy.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, like Mr. Zapata stated, Jackson should remain a public facility, and whether or not they have an independent board agency that monitors them is really a means to an end. I think what they really need to focus on is preventative care for its patients and improving the community outreach. Right now, there's a lot of people who could be simply treated with an antibiotic and that would save the county thousands upon thousands of dollars, because instead of your flu being treated by an antibiotic, it turns into a $20,000 untreated medical bill when it turns to pneumonia. So these kinds of preventative care is what really they need to focus on, and by using through community outreach and other tools to make sure that their patients stay healthy, and you will see the dramatic drop-off in the cost of health care.
But you would favor changing the basic structure or not?
No, well, right now, I would take a closer look at it and make sure that it does have some oversight. Now, through the independent board is possible, or through a trust fund that is sort of looks over the medical system itself of Jackson. I mean, because Jackson has done wonderful things for the local economy, and especially for its people. And unfortunately, it treats people that most of the time get lost about the way. So they need to make sure that they are properly funded and that they continue to provide the level of service and health care that they do across the board, regardless of what your financial status is.
The Charter Review Commission has made it easier for cities to annex unincorporated areas, but it has maintained the requirements for annexation, making it more difficult. Where do you stand on that?
Now, I think residents should be allowed to create their own
The incorporation?
incorporation. It should be as streamlined as possible. Again, it should allow residents to incorporate themselves, but without excluding certain neighborhoods, sort of using based on either economic status or ethnicity. It needs to be a comprehensive city, not just 3 blocks here, 2 blocks over there, and let's exclude this area of town.
My thoughts are, look, I think part of the county's problem and the reason you have such, a parochial nature and mindset is that you still have half of the county commission focused on municipal issues. We need to figure out a better way to govern the municipal area. I believe in self-determination. I believe in making sure that the majority of the money that's collected in a certain area is invested and spent in that area. I think the residents, it's a fairness issue for them. And I think there's other issues that need to be dealt at the county level. You look at the poor areas in this community, the high crime areas, it should be a county responsibility. They're the ones who have the assets, they're the ones who have the resources to really be able to engage that issue. It shouldn't be the municipalities doing it. And I also think that municipalities, if you go to any municipality, it doesn't matter if they're all old or new, there's a sense of community. There's a community fabric there. There's something, a catalyst that once you incorporate, it starts to bring neighbors and people together to do good things for that community. You see it everywhere you go. You'll have chambers of commerce, Lions, Rotary clubs. Those things contribute to the quality of life. And it's not to say that in the unincorporated areas you don't have any of that. Now, annexation needs to be done in a fair and common sense approach. You need to look at annexation where it makes sense. It can't be a money grab for folks. It can't be a city that needs to figure out how to solve its fiscal problems by chasing a certain area that happens to have a rich tax base. We need to do something that's fair, that's going to provide, it's around community, it's around transportation corridors, things that make sense that will enhance the quality of life. Am I crazy about having maybe 60 cities in Miami-Dade County? Absolutely not. But I think there's got to be a better way to govern the unincorporated areas, and I think that's led to a lot of the problems, and it's an issue that needs to be addressed more.
I want to follow up with this because there was a Charter Review Commission report that just came out, and they seem to have given a lot of weight to incorporating new cities. And of course, you had the League of Cities was very involved, and you had the former mayor of Pinecrest and the current mayor of Doral, and these were cities that really had to fight the county a lot because the pendulum was so bad for them to try to incorporate. But then they really didn't touch annexation, and it would seem, according to their recommendation, that they're essentially saying create new cities and keep making it tough for existing cities to annex into areas. I'm wondering if you would like to see similar rules for both, or do you think that there's a distinction?
I really don't think that there's much of a distinction. I mean, if you incorporate your city, I think you should be able to annex if possible. Now, again, I would leave it up to the residents of that particular area.
Okay.
I would tell you that you address the city issue. Where would be the areas that you would create natural boundaries, cities with natural boundaries that make sense along transportation corridors that have a common sense of a community, and then the areas that are then left open, and there will be gaps. Then we approach an annexation process and deal with that. The cities will have the upper hand because they'll have the infrastructure, and the resources, the attorneys to go after and be able to, competing against the unincorporated areas, the cities will clean house. So I think you address the incorporating part. What are the areas where you could create cities? And then the areas, the gaps that are left open, then you address it through an annexation process. I think that would make the most sense.
In general, you seem to favor somehow whittling down the size of the unincorporated areas.
I would probably tell you that you want to eliminate it. I could tell you, going back to my Tallahassee roots, when I represented my district, there was 15% incorporated, 85% unincorporated, yet almost everything that I did, almost all the resources I was able to bring back from Tallahassee were for the incorporated areas. It's a much more efficient way of governing. There's a lot of potential and a lot of opportunities for folks in the community to really engage and do good things for their folks. I would tell you that I am in favor of incorporation. I think allowing a group of people to come together and govern and figure out what are their own priorities and what are their urgent needs and how they want their community to develop is very, very important, and really contributes to the quality of life. And then it takes away that whole dual focus that the county commission has had, those two hats that it doesn't seem to know how to wear well, to focus on what needs to be regional government, which was the true intention of the charter, for us to be a regional government.
One of the issues that you've been up in the legislature, and this is not going away, that's going to be the destination resorts issue. Now, would you favor them passing a law that allows a referendum in Miami-Dade for destination resorts? And if so, would you advocate for destination resorts in Miami-Dade? Let's start with you.
Okay. I think it really depends on the economic the impact that these destination resorts would have. Now, regarding right now the Genting situation, that is one of the locations that they wanted to build here, and again, it did not go to referendum, and I think the people really need to make the decision for themselves. So I would be for pushing a transparent process where Miami-Dade residents can go ahead and vote on this issue.
No.
Now, I wouldn't strictly focus on this because I don't want Miami-Dade to have their economy solely based on hotel and leisure. I want to make sure we have a very diverse economy. One of the things that we need to focus on is on the healthcare industry. Maybe spawn additional investment there so we can attract more businesses here and spur innovation locally.
But once there's a vote coming and you favor allowing a vote, where would you stand on that? Would you advocate? Would you go out and say let's vote for resort destination casinos?
No, I personally would not advocate for it, but I would leave it up. I would support a referendum.
Be neutral.
I would be neutral. Correct.
Okay.
Destination resorts was a phrase that was coined basically to figure out a way to compete with Indian gaming. Nobody was able to compete with Indian gaming, so we came up with destination resorts. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of allowing more gaming in Dade and Broward, yet that money gets distributed statewide. I'm very uncomfortable with that concept. And I'm also uncomfortable with the concept that we're not really focusing on what this community really needs, which is a convention hotel establishment. We're one of the few, if not the only major community doesn't have a hotel attached to its convention center. That's something that should be a priority for this community. Whether or not we allow gaming and a referendum happens, I'm not a big proponent of gambling. I don't think it provides the real economic development impact that it's promised. It will generate jobs, and I think development is great, and that this foreign company wants to come here, invest, and make a great resort. I think it's wonderful. I think we should encourage that. But the gaming component is something that concerns me a lot. I think the original size of the proposal was something that concerned me a lot. I think gaming policy needs to be handled in Tallahassee. There's a lot of competing and complicated factors, how it impacts pari-mutuels, how it impacts other things, what happens with their gaming compact with the Seminoles. It's a very complex issue. For us to try to determine that at a local level, I think it's unfair. But, again, us having a massive establishment here where that money gets, distributed statewide is something that concerns me a great deal, and it takes away from the focus of what we really need to focus on. At the end of the day, this community's economic development agenda should not be based around a development project. It should be based around solid, concrete jobs, whether whether it's in the biosciences, financial, technology. And those are the areas where we could really be leaders here. In the healthcare sector, I mean, we should be a world-class healthcare destination. Those are the kind of destination resorts I want to establish, where people from all over the world come in here to seek healthcare, where people come over here to get financing, trade financing, where people come in here and you know, the best researchers and some of the best researchers in the world will be here. Those are the kind of destination resorts I want to build over here, not one that's based on gaming, because again, at the end of the day, I don't think there's a true economic development impact. If you look at who had the highest foreclosure rates and some of the highest unemployment rates in the country was Nevada, and they built their economy on gaming. So I think that's a very important lesson.
I wanted to just, we've covered some of the big picture things, but drilling down into your district, and we have like 5 more minutes. What are you hearing as you campaign? And I assume that you go door to door, you go and you speak to the different homeowners associations and groups. What's the one crucial issue that's coming? And also, is the district pretty much the same as it was, or in redistricting did it change much?
It shifted a little west.
Yeah.
All right. So
you know, the district. So the district, you really have 2 areas. You have the southern area, then you have the northern area. The northern area, very Hispanic. They've developed it differently. They have a different flavor. You know, the issues they have, obviously, the economy, very concerned. There's high foreclosure rates out there. People are struggling, obviously. And then, you know, you have the issue of growth. Growth will always kind of be an issue out there. And then the lack of trust in government. I think those are the major issues. I mean, one of the things I hear a lot, actually, when I knock on doors is people are upset. They said their streets didn't flood, and now they repaved the streets, and now the streets flood. So I think that's the way they view government. You
that's
know?
on the northern end?
And the south, well, not actually, and everywhere. Every time they come in, we pave a street. It used to be fine, and now it's repaved. It looks nice, but now it floods. So, you know, I think that's kind of the way people view government. They just can't get out of its way. You know, the area lacks a true sense of community, but it has incredible potential. And I think that area needs to be developed that way. The county needs to do a better job of responding to a lot of the needs out there. You know, the school issue, I think, has gotten resolved to a certain degree. The transportation issue will always be a threat. We need to, obviously, a threat in the sense that it continues to, you know, worsen people's quality of life. You need to better mass transit. Light rail, I think, would make much more sense out there. The bus, rapid transit, the BRS systems I think would make a lot of sense out there. But folks, you know, our basic folks, I mean, those are it's a solid middle-class community. They're scared about the economy. You know, they're worried about, you know, the county not doing the right things and mismanagement and whatnot. But I'll tell you this much, the area has incredible potential. You ask me how I know that is because if you talk to anybody who's a real estate commercial developer out there, they'll tell you that some of the top-rated payways, Panera Breads, anywhere in the country are actually located out there in West Kendall. So there is a great economy going out there. I think Miami Airport holds a key to a lot of the economic development that can go on out there. And I think we just need to do a much better job of getting the county to be responsive to the needs out there and to continue making investments in those areas. I mean, you know, that area is perfect to create, you know, the county spends a ton of money on sidewalks. Let's create bike paths that really kind of connect that community. How do we create these, how do we really kind of focus on creating interconnectivity within that area? You know, get people, you know, stop having people to leave West Kendall. You know, make it a self-sufficient community so that people don't have to, you know, go through the hassles of going down Kendall Drive. I think those are some of the things we need to look at and some of the potentials you have in there to improve the quality of life.
One of the biggest things that I've always heard from going door to door is small business owners are always having problems with permitting. I spoke to this one individual that he opened up a new storefront inside of a strip mall, and you know, unfortunately, he was one of the only people there, and there was no restaurant, nowhere to eat. So he thought, oh, this is a fantastic opportunity for me. So he wanted to go ahead and open up a cafeteria at the corner. First month down deposit, no problem. 6 months later, he still did not have a permit to be able to operate in that area. And he was just infuriated because he wants to, you know, create jobs and really support the local economy, and he's having a really difficult time. Mm-hmm. So finally, you know, he was able to get through the permitting process, and, you know, he was able to open up the storefront. And another issue is when it came to inspectors coming around, I heard this from a number of people where they were inconsistent, where an inspector came and said, oh, this ramp is at the wrong angle, it's not wide enough. So the business owner went, tore it down, and then rebuilt it to the specifications, and then had another inspector come by and say, no, what are you doing? This is wrong, you had it correctly. So it's these kinds of inefficiencies that are really detracting people. But I would also agree with Mr. Zapata that we really need to enhance the economy out west. There's a strong residential areas, not a lot of strong business areas. The two largest employers are Baptist West Kendall, which has been an economic hub for out west, and also Florida International University has a large number of employees.
And you work for...
I do. I work at FIU.
You're a network engineer, which I guess is sort of, has to do with
IT infrastructure.
IT. Okay. And Juan, if you could explain what you do now. You run a company, but
Yeah, so I have several things. One is I'm involved in a condo management company. We manage condo associations. Julio Robina, the former state rep's a partner of mine. We did a lot of condo law in Tallahassee. We joke when we get into that.
so that's the Robina
So that's the Robina. I do Midtown. If you see a lot of the advertising that's out there, I have a company. I partnered up with some engineers. There's some solar powered towers that we do there. I do that, and then I do some consulting and some other investments. The consulting mostly I do a lot of work in Texas, in the Southwest. I do some stuff in Colombia and in Puerto Rico. It's mostly business development stuff. I work with some engineering construction firms, and I also do some public affairs consulting for folks. Nothing in Florida, nothing in Dade County. I did that on purpose to avoid any sort of conflict. But at the same time, also I have a band in Tallahassee, so I can't do anything there. But that gives me the financial ability and the flexibility to be able to attend to my elected roles. A lesson I learned very clearly when I first got elected, and they told you it was a part-time job. The only thing part-time is the pay, and not the work. So,
Speaking of pay, what do you think about the Charter Review Commission suggesting that it should be $45,000?
I'll go first. I think the median makes sense. The state formula, would give people paying 90-something thousand. I think I'm against that. I think the median would make sense. I think, look, at the end of the day, anybody who gets into these positions really for the pay, it makes a mistake. But we got to figure out a way to create a balance so that those who maybe don't have the financial means are excluded from public service. So I think a somewhere around the median income would be something that would make sense. I think it should be gradual. I think over time, so that the folks who are in office now, you have term limits, wouldn't really benefit from that pay. You'd have them, go up at maybe 5,000, whatever formula, so that eventually after 8 years you get to a certain place where you get paid. But I think, look, tying, the pay of a commissioner to the median income of a county is not a bad thing. If the county grows and prospers, then the commissioners will get paid more. If the county doesn't stay stagnant, then the commissioners suffer.
But the way they've put this, and I'll let you answer that, but just so they also have on this task force an amendment that was proposed to make it full-time with no outside work. So anyone working here would essentially be working, you would no longer be working at FIU as an IT.
Yes.
And I couldn't do anything, and I think that's unfair.
Is $45,000 enough for people who...
No, I think this thing with no outside employment is a mistake. I'm going to be real quick. It's a mistake. It really puts people in a very tough situation, and I think...
If you're going to do that, it has to be more pay?
No, I'm saying you have an option. Give people the option. Look, there's a pay, or there's, give people flexibility. And I don't see why, if you're a county commissioner, you can't have any outside employment. I think you address that. If the concern is that somehow your employment is going to be connected to things that may put you in a conflict of interest, then strengthen our ethics laws. That's something we can do and we should do. And you constantly revise them to make sure those kinds of things don't happen.
Well, I couldn't disagree more. I think that we need to make sure that we use a term limiting structure, and that we make sure that it is a good wage. And $45,000 is not necessarily a great wage for a full-time position. Now, I would make sure that you eliminate the part-time aspect of it, and that you cannot have, because of it doesn't matter the oversight or the ethical oversight, I should say, because when you look at it, there's an inherent conflict of interest built into it. So I would be for using the state system.
Okay, so you're for the state formula.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then capping it at 8 years. There could be some tweaks adjusted to that.
I think you both agree on term limits.
Yeah, just a quick question, Mr. Munoz. This is a full-time job that you have?
Yes,
right
yes,
now?
it is.
How would you be able to balance your full-time job with serving on the commission, which is a full-time job?
Yes, yes. Well, fortunately, my job does offer me some leniency, and basically it would be coming out of my vacation time for the most part.
That's love for the county.